The garden of a single Asian palace was once worth more than the entire state of California. That's how the greatest financial hallucination in human history began. September 22, 1985. Main hall of the Plaza Hotel in New York. The finance ministers of 5 world powers signed a document on a mahogany table. The Plaza Accord drastically devalued the dollar against the Japanese yen. That paper signed thousands of miles away ignited an uncontrollable money machine. Welcome to Plexo. Japan exported technology and vehicles to the entire world, but suddenly its currency was worth double. The Bank of Japan cut interest rates to 2.5% to protect its companies, and credit became virtually free. Commercial banks started lending millions to anyone with a piece of land, and the entire country entered a speculative frenzy. Land values in Tokyo tripled in just 4 years, leading corporations to stop manufacturing products and instead focus on buying and selling buildings. The Ginza district became the most expensive square meter on the planet, and the abundance was so extreme it created absurd scenes. On Tokyo nights, executives waved wads of 10,000 yen bills in the air just to get a taxi to stop. Cash lost its real meaning. Banks sent salesmen door to door, begging citizens to accept million-dollar loans with no collateral. The real economy had disappeared, but no one in the government wanted to stop the party. By the end of 1989, Japan's delirium reached mathematically impossible proportions. Japan's land area is just a tiny fraction of the United States, but its real estate value quadrupled that of the entire American country. Japanese corporations bought New York's Rockefeller Center and Hollywood's Columbia Pictures Studios. The stock market reflected this excessive euphoria. On December 29, 1989, the Nikkei index hit its all-time high of 38,915 points. Stockbrokers in Tokyo toasted with French champagne while screens flashed green. Speculation mutated into increasingly strange assets. Golf club memberships became the new gold. In bank vaults in the financial district, employees stacked golf club membership certificates printed on sheets of pure gold, used as collateral for multi-million-dollar loans. A simple membership to play at the Kagane course cost nearly $3 million. But the system required a constant injection of debt to avoid collapse. That's when Yasushi Mino, a central banker with thick-rimmed glasses and an unyielding demeanor, took control of the Bank of Japan. Mino despised real estate speculation. He believed the bubble was destroying the Japanese work ethic and threatening the country's social stability. While the world admired the Asian economic miracle, Mino prepared a direct attack on the financial system. Within months, he aggressively raised interest rates. The goal was not to slow the market but to crush it completely to purge the excesses. The needle that popped the bubble was a simple circular from the Ministry of Finance in 1990. The government drastically limited the amount of money banks could lend for real estate transactions. The market reaction was violent and immediate. With the flow of new credit cut off, speculators couldn't pay their old debts. The Nikkei plunged 49% in less than a year, from 38,900 points in December 1989 to 19,800 in October 1990. But the real disaster was hidden in the concrete foundations. Land prices in major cities began a free fall that would last over a decade. Plots worth 100 million yen fell to less than 20 million. Japanese banks discovered their vaults were full of collateral that was now worthless. The mortgage lending companies, known as Jusen, were the first to fail. They had lent billions to developers linked to the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia, making it impossible to recover the funds. Panic seized financial institutions. In the backyards of regional banks, employees burned in shredded mountains of unpaid loan files to hide their insolvency from inspectors. The entire banking system was technically bankrupt, but the state refused to liquidate the zombie entities. Instead of taking losses, banks refinanced bad debts to maintain the illusion of solvency. In total, accumulated losses exceeded $1 trillion, and no one in the government dared to admit it. The financial collapse quickly turned into an unprecedented human tragedy. Japan entered what economists called the lost decade, a period of chronic stagnation and deflation that rewrote the rules of modern capitalism. Companies, suffocated by debts from the bubble era, halted all hiring. Young people who graduated in 1995 hit an insurmountable wall, giving rise to the so-called employment ice age. An entire generation was condemned to low-paid temporary jobs, destroying the Japanese social contract of lifetime employment. The shame of economic failure pushed thousands to the brink. The country's suicide rate soared at the end of the decade, exceeding 30,000 deaths annually. Tokyo's financial districts, once symbols of opulence, filled with shadows. Under the concrete bridges of Ueno Park, blue tarpaulin tents multiplied, inhabited by former middle-class executives who had lost their homes and families to debt. The Bank of Japan tried to revive the economy by cutting interest rates to 0%, a desperate measure never before seen in modern history. However, cheap money didn't work. Citizens, terrified of the future and watching prices fall month after month, refused to consume. They preferred to keep their money under the mattress rather than spend it. The most dynamic country in Asia had become a giant liquidity trap, paralyzed by fear. The Japanese government spent trillions of dollars on public infrastructure projects to try to revive the country. They built bridges to nowhere and paved entire riverbeds, pushing public debt to over 236% of GDP, the highest in the developed world. The Japanese landscape was scarred by the excess. On the outskirts of cities like Osaka, huge rusty cranes stood abandoned for years atop half-finished skyscraper skeletons, steel monuments to a wealth that turned out to be a mirage. The commercial real estate market took over 2 decades to bottom out, and many 1989 prices never recovered. What happened in Tokyo didn't stay within its borders. The extreme tools the Bank of Japan invented to combat the collapse, such as massive money printing and zero interest rates, were copied by the United States and Europe after the 2008 financial crisis. The Japanese experiment became the world's monetary laboratory. Today, the entire world operates under the same policies of infinite debt that condemned Japan's economy to perpetual stagnation. Global corporations depend on cheap credit to survive, exactly like the speculators of Ginza 3 decades ago. History shows that wealth based on debt always demands an inevitable and very painful future sacrifice. Japan proved that infinite debt doesn't buy the future, it only rents an illusion, paid for with decades of silence.